But as long as it's recording, that's the only thing that really matters. So, how's the performance been going?
We had a slow night opening night. I think we only had like 16 people there.
Okay.
But then like the rest of the week we had like close to sellouts.
Oh, not bad.
And I think we're heading up for another good weekend tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday. Looks like we're setting up to close out strong.
All right. I got to see Danielle's performance. I did it remotely.
Okay.
So the show was pretty fun. The only problem was the remote for the show. I had to say, like, because not everyone had a mic, couldn't. Yeah, you know how that goes. Project your voice. I was like, I'm sitting there. I'm like, God, am I recording with mic? Because it's like I gotta feel like I'm saying, project your voice, project your voice, project your voice. But it's not like they could hear me.
Yeah, right.
Well, welcome everyone to the Dragoon's Lair podcast. I am the Blue Dragoon himself, Daniel the Dragon, and with me remote, because as you could clearly tell, he's still in the middle of production time.
Yeah. Hey people, it's me. The one, the only,
Wee little
because
puppet man.
we little puppet man.
Yeah, you pretty much are. So far, the voting is coming in as you're a puppet. You're not a real boy. You're a
Puppet
puppet.
with puppet with a magnum mustache.
Well, let's see if we can get you there because we
Hey,
need.
well, hey, I'll do it.
Oh, I know you'll do it. It's just a matter of making sure. Now, did you listen to the episode with Doug?
No, but I got the highlights.
Okay, because yeah, we testing that out. So we did the video episode. Now I posted it twice just to make sure because I wasn't sure if every format would be able to handle with the video, if you'd see the video or if you'd only hear it. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently, like with Apple Podcast, you can only hear it from what I can tell. So, like Apple
Of course.
Podcast, I think iHeartRadio, you can hear it, you can't see it. But on Spotify, you can see it. So, it's a perk for anyone listening if they want to listen to it on Spotify instead of waiting for it to come out on YouTube, you can check it out on Spotify. And I think pretty much moving forward, we may be doing that more.
That's fine with me.
Yeah. It's more work for me when I got to double up anyway,
Yeah.
seeing as how I'm the editor.
Yeah, that's like me whenever I shoot a movie. Director, editor, sometimes writer,
Well,
sometimes actor.
that's because you don't hand me the footage so I can edit it, but that's on you.
Dude, I would say I shot about last Saturday, I shot about half a film and the footage looked fine when I was taking it from the card and putting it on the hard drive on my hard drive.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous to listen to the audio because even though I had the directional mic up,
Yeah.
one of the actresses she's just very soft spoken, and I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna have, and in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm gonna have to reshoot this entire thing because I can't hear her. So finally, I
You
worked up enough guts. I put a scene into the editing software. Couldn't hear her for shit. But then I tweaked the sound and everything, and I brought everything up, and I was like, "Oh, I can hear people now. Good."
so now you know what I go through. Yeah, no one cares.
Anyway,
So, yes, now we had a special episode of the Dragoon's Lair podcast with Doug. It was good to have Doug in the Dragoon's Lair, so that was in person. Although I know that the camera does not make people feel comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
You're comfortable, but when you won't look at yourself on camera, will you?
I'm looking at myself right now.
No, no, I'm saying like on a playback when it's actually going through. Because you
Uh,
don't listen to the shows.
I don't, but if I have to watch like I've seen the fourth wall 100 times, and I'm in it, unfortunately. So I had to see myself, and I was like, ooh. But
Yeah,
no, it's all right.
I know. I have the same feeling with you whenever I have to edit the footage.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. So, how have you been dealing with the weather? Because, before we jump into any of the topics that we're going to discuss and whatnot, we've had the Canadian wildfire since we're in New York. So, our sky has been orange
It looks
to,
like we're living on Mars.
yeah, I think because it seems like we didn't get a harsh winter and other places did, we're getting the California wildfires that we've never experienced.
Exactly. I was talking about that to one of my coworkers yesterday, and we're all sitting here bugging. Oh my God! Look at the sky; it's orange and da 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 da. And I'm like, people in California be like, meh.
Yeah. So we now have a touch of what they've gone through for the years, the way they've gone through a touch of what we get when it comes to snow.
Yeah. They're like, oh my God, three flurries, it's a blizzard. And like, calm the fuck down, put your pants on, go to work.
You know what though? We can feel for each other at this situation, but now it's like now you know what we've been going through all these years.
Yeah. But
So
no, it's okay. I mean, we ended up working remotely today, and we found out that we're working remotely tomorrow, which
yay.
is ridiculous because I can't do inventory in the library remotely. So I have no idea what I'm going to be doing tomorrow.
Well, at the very least, you won't have to be going out there and breathing in more of this than you need.
Well, I mean, we were going to be inside anyway, and the sky is outside now. It looks like it's just going to rain. Like I can actually see like patches of blue, and I can see like regular clouds.
Yeah, the weather's been changing. I know, like yesterday, because you anybody who's watching the video of this, they could see like I got the window behind me, and yes, the shades are closed, but you could still see some of the light. But yeah,
Yeah,
it was really orange yesterday.
if you ever watch the film The Martian, and whenever he's outside looking at the sky, that's what it. I mean, obviously, for people in New York, you're gonna like asshole. We have windows, we can see. But for anybody who's
Outside of the tri-state area.
outside of the tri-state, actually, this reaches down to Washington. But yeah, it was nuts, man.
Yeah, so we've been going through our own apocalyptic event so far, but which brings us to a wonderful topic for today because talking apocalyptic action movies. Let's face it, action movies usually have an apocalyptic feel to them sometimes. So, we want to look back at some of the action movies and discuss like whether they've held up, like how they've been and how they've changed over the years.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can start off. Let's go back for like kind of like the 70s. You can look at like the action movies. The action was pretty slow paced. You didn't have like tons of special effects and everything, but they had great soundtracks.
Oh, without a doubt.
The music back then really made the action movies. But I mean, let's face it, the action heroes of like the 70s were more Charles Bronson.
Yeah, it was more practical than special effect driven. So you had more people excuse me,
Yeah.
just going out there kicking your ass. They kind of follow the same cookie cutter type format where somebody did a husband or a father wrong and he goes out to seek revenge, and it's very somebody who stuff you would find today. No crazy laser guns, no crazy special effects, blowing up a car,
Well,
stuff like that.
there was like car chases, some car
Yeah, oh
flip.
yeah,
You'd see the cars
but like
flip
nothing,
over, but it
right? But
wasn't.
nothing like extravagant like you have today.
Yeah, like you knew it was a big budget like action movie if there was an explosion.
Yeah, and well, one of the things about 70 action films in the 70s, they didn't rely that heavily on computer generated special effects. They made the directors and the stunt coordinators think more, and with that thinking, you've gotten one of the best car chase scenes in cinematic history when Steve McQueen did his car chase scene in Bullet through the streets of San Francisco.
Oh yeah, Bullet is a classic when it comes to the car chase. Like then again, most of Steve McQueen's resume when it comes to his movies is like amazing car sequences.
Yeah. That motorcycle scene he did in The Great Escape when he's driving the motorcycle over the hills and stuff like that, and he's trying to get away from the Gestapo. That was all him up until the part where he crashes into the barbed wire. And McQueen was like, I'll crash into the barbed wire. I have no problem doing that. And the studio was like, no. Sorry, Steve. We have to draw the line somewhere. That's why we pay stunt doubles.
Yeah, there's a liability thing, and I will say,
Yeah.
like I've been listening to the Talkville podcast, the Smallville recap, and Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling have said, like, when it came to their stunt guys, they had a great stunt team, so they had them do the stunts, and the stunt guys only get paid when they do the stunts. So when the
Yeah.
actors are doing the stunt guy's not really getting paid. So, and safety reasons, it's probably better to have the stunt guys doing it anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's what those people are trained for. They're trained to take a hit. They're trained to land a certain way when you're falling off a roof or getting pushed out of an airplane. You're trained for these things. You as an actor aren't,
Now,
you know?
that'll take us into the 80s because the problem was, yes, the special effects were getting better, and action movies did kind of pick up in tone in the 80s. And the 80s are what I would consider like action movie heaven, because that
Oh
was
yeah.
the birth of the action star. That's when we got Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and
Van Damme.
Bruce Willis. So we had a lot of like great classic action movies. But when you take a movie like Rocky, the Rocky
Mm.
franchise, you can't really have stunt guys doing those performances in the ring, because how are you doing it? It's
All
you
right.
need to see their faces, and their bodies aren't going to match up.
Yeah, and a lot of I was watching a lot of like behind the scenes on Rocky, and especially on I believe it was Rocky 4 when he was fighting Dolph Lundgren at the end. Lundgren sent him to the hospital for like 4 days. It
On
was, I think,
Yeah, because
unintentional.
unintentional, but that was Stallone telling him that it's
Him hit
like,
me.
yeah, hit
Yeah,
me. We need to make this look real. Really hit me.
yeah.
And
He was like hit me, and he goes okay, and he clocks him in the chest, and I think like he fractured his sternum.
yeah, I'm all for realism, but not putting someone in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Rocky 4 looks amazing,
Oh,
but
those the Rocky films, the Creed films, they have amazing choreography. Uh, Michael B. Jordan, Stallone, Mr. T, Carl Weathers. What's the guy from the last Creed film? He played
Jonathan
shit.
Majors,
Jonathan Majors. Thank you. I knew it was something Majors. I
we've
give
talked
those
about him
gentlemen.
enough.
We did. I just can't remember his name for shit. I give those gentlemen a tremendous amount of credit. A for getting into uh, getting into shape that you need to do a movie like that, and to remember all the choreography to make it look real without actually pummeling the actor across the ring from you.
Yeah, I mean, when we look into the 80s and we see like action stars kind of really varied in their physical appearance.
Yeah,
And like Stallone put in the work to look as ripped as he did for Rocky and Rambo. And let's face it, like Schwarzenegger was jacked to begin with because
yeah.
bodybuilder.
He was Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, he's Schwarzenegger. He was always jacked back then, so he was always putting in the work. But then you go and you take a look at like Die Hard.
See,
He looked like your everyman. Like he was more
he was your everyday
relatable.
man.
Yeah, he was
Right.
more relatable.
Right, because you have your people who look like Schwarzenegger who says, okay, you know what? I want somebody like Schwarzenegger to go take on a predator. You
Yeah.
know, I want him to be the running man.
Yeah,
Okay,
you want the guy that looks
you want
huge.
right, you want the guy who can carry a tree on his shoulder while pushing the suburban down a hill to get the kidnappers for his daughter. You want that, but then Die Hard came around, and you're like, okay, here's somebody who looks like me. You know, here's somebody who, you know, looks like he enjoys beer and pizza just as much as I do. You know, because I'm a fat bastard.
Yeah, and that's
But
yeah, that was the thing. Like Die Hard, I think that's one of the long running things, other than everyone knowing it's a Christmas movie, except for
Yeah.
Bruce Willis.
So
But
Bruce Willis.
yeah, but Bruce Willis, his appearance, the way he carries himself, and in like the Die Hard movies and stuff, he is the everyman. Like you can more relate to him, and he was also the guy that got hurt. I mean, let's face it,
Oh yeah.
him walking through the broken glass because he took his shoes off.
Oh, that's cringy. That's
You,
cringeworthy.
but you felt it.
You did. You're like, oh no, don't do that. No, 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 no. And then watching him pull the glass out, you're like, oh.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it really was like it was a master class in practical effects, but then having
Right.
the huge explosions because the budget's picked
You
up.
have to pay off. Although one of the stories I like about the Die Hard film, at the end of the film, and I think you've heard this
Oh,
before.
yeah, absolutely with Rickman.
At Rickman, at the end of the film, they had, of course, you have Hans Gruber holding on to Holly at the end of the film, and he's 50 stories above the ground. So he's on wires, and they told Rickman, okay, we're going, and there's an airbag under him, and he's only like maybe 50 feet off the ground. They told him, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, then we're going to release you. Look scared. And he goes, all right, I'm an actor. I got this. So they have the camera pointed down, and everybody's like, oh my God, that was a great look of terror. Well, what happened was, and this is what you do as a director, they released him on 2. So they go 1, 2, snap. So when he started falling on 2, he really said, oh shit. And so that was a real look of terror
Yeah,
on his face.
he was expecting the 3 before he
Right.
goes.
He was expecting 1, 2, 3, go. But what you got was 1, 2, ah! So when he gave you the holy shit look, that was a real holy shit look.
Yeah,
That was not acting.
the late great Alan Rickman really personified that character.
Yeah.
I don't think they could never remake that because no one could
No.
ever do the job that Alan Rickman did.
No.
And I mean,
Although
go ahead.
it was kind of interesting to have Jeremy Irons play his brother in the third one.
Yeah, which Jeremy Irons, another amazing talent. And
Right.
when he drops the accent, it's great when you hear them drop the English accent.
Yes.
And they sound, and all, it's like I think one of my favorite things, because Die Hard 3 was more 90s.
Yeah, it was.
And it,
like,
but
yeah.
it really was like one of my favorite things is you hear in the background when they're handing out like the different personas for all the guys, and you hear, you can be the Padre. You hear the one guy, the Padre. It's like those little moments that are in there hidden. They can really make a scene. And like
Die Hard 3 came out in 95.
yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
look that one up real quick.
Yeah. I don't hide that shit. I'm lucky I can remember my own fucking
Yeah,
birthday, let alone
but
movie
like
release
the
dates.
80s going into the 90s really was like the action movie boom. But
Yeah.
like the 80s set the tone. But the 80s was more the patriotic like heroes. I mean, you got action movies, but you didn't always get like the Schwarzenegger action movie. You know, you look at something like Roadhouse. Roadhouse is an action movie.
Yeah. Oh, would add that Roadhouse is an action movie.
Yeah. You take Top Gun, action movie,
Action movie,
but
without a doubt.
but it was more action with the aerial stunts and all
Right.
the work with the fighters. That
Right.
was another type of action movie that it's underrated, really, because
It is.
everyone thinks of the hero going in with a gun and like taking out the bad guys, not the same way as, you know, you've got like the F-15s taking on like the Tomcat planes. These were like really highly choreographed, very dangerous stunts because they're in planes. These guys are in the air.
Yeah. They had when they were making Top Gun, the Navy gave them, I believe, two real missiles that they could fire.
Yeah.
And like, you only get 2, make them count. And Bruckheimer goes, okay. And he used 2 real missiles, but then he used miniatures. And with the mini missiles, that blew everything up. And when they showed the Navy department, or whoever, when they showed the Navy, the guy who was like, I guess like the liaison,
Yeah.
he was like, what did you do? how'd you get your hands on this? We only gave you two, and here we are, like 6 or 7 missile shots. How'd you do that? Why'd you go behind my back and get the missiles? And he was like, no. He goes, we used two missiles that you gave us. The rest are all miniatures.
Yeah,
And he goes, and the guy goes, what?
yeah, and
And
that's
this was like a legit Navy pilot who couldn't tell the difference.
yeah, and that's the thing because it really boils down to like Star Wars helped pioneer a lot of those like special effects of
Yeah.
having like the miniatures, seeing like a smaller version of the Death Star exploding. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like these were things that like they were really innovative. I mean, you take a look at like Alien.
Yeah.
Alien's a horror movie, but when you look at the sequel, Aliens, that's an action
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, without a doubt, that's an action film.
Yeah, so
I would even consider the first one an action film.
it to an extent there was action, but it was more horror because it was more of a suspense horror.
Yeah.
You know, it that's the funny thing about the genres and like the classifications. Movies really do fall into multiple categories.
Yep.
And you know, that's the thing. Like trying to distinguish, especially in a franchise that changes over. Like Aliens is a prime example of Alien was more suspense horror. There were action elements, but it was more about the claustrophobic elements of them being on the ship. You know, the same way that John Carpenter's The Thing was, it's like it has the action, those suspenseful moments, but it really is horror because it's the horror of not knowing where it's coming
Who's the
from,
thing? Right.
who's the thing, where the creature's going to pop out of. And
Right.
that was like a great moment, but when you get to Aliens, Aliens was you got the colonial marines coming in with their guns and everything, the
Game over,
flamethrowers.
man.
It's
Game
game over,
over.
man. Game over. It really was moved into an action element, even with the few horror elements. Please stop clicking your damn thing. Yeah, yeah, that's not going to be helpful for our listeners, let alone me. I know you don't care about me, but hopefully you care about the listeners.
Anyway.
But yeah, so Aliens really was like that showed the true tonal shift of where you can really mix the genres together.
Mm-hmm.
And like we took like you figured the 80s, not only did we get like all these heavy hitters, but we also got a lot more martial arts action. The 70s had tons of martial arts action, but a lot of that stuff was coming over from like China and Japan. We were getting those, they were more imports, so they weren't really like staples in American cinema, although you did get stuff in the 70s like The Last Dragon.
And I say, who's the man? You say, sure enough.
Sure enough, the Shogun of Harlem.
And you had a lot. I think you also have a lot of in the '80s because you had the Stallones, you had the Schwarzeneggers, you had the really big buff guys making all those movies,
Yep.
and they were coming out like crazy. Like almost like every 6 months, you had either a new Stallone film or a new um, Schwarzenegger film. You had another Aliens film, and that's why you have a film like Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep.
Great story, great visual effects, great acting, and it just kind of flew under the radar.
Well, also because it was more stylized as the typical Hong Kong action movie, like that you would see with the martial arts action, but it also turned the convention on its head because we all were thinking, oh, Jack Burton's the hero.
He's
No,
not.
he's the
He's the
sidekick.
sidekick.
And that's
He,
the John Carpenter was always ahead of the curve when it
oh
came
yeah.
to his movies, you know, but he used Kurt Russell in a lot of his movies, and like you take a look at Escape from LA, Escape
LA,
from New
Escape
York,
from New York.
like Snake Plissken, great action character.
One thing I liked Escape from New York, great film.
Yep.
When I saw Escape from LA, I was kind of like, eh.
We're kind of rehashing the same thing over again.
Right. One thing I wish they would have went into, whether it be another film at the time, maybe give me a comic book story, when he was talking about what happened in Cleveland. I'm
Oh,
like, what happened in Cleveland? I mean, what happened in Cleveland? Tell me. I
yeah,
wanted to know.
you know, it really felt that that world was a full-fledged world, a character of itself, because you did want to know what were these other things that went on.
Right.
So, and I mean, let's face it, it also gave us like the action movies with all of our martial arts action in the 80s, where we did get like Jean Claude Van Damme, the rise of Van Damme and Seagal, where,
Yeah, they
like,
make the same movies over and over again with different titles.
yeah. And I mean, one of my favorite stories that I love to tell people is when I worked in a video store. And I'm going to say it because it's defunct now. Saturday Matinee. I'm working in there. I'm standing by the counter, and I don't even think I was working that day. I'm like just hanging out because I actually liked my coworkers at the time. And they went, and like woman comes in and she's like, "Do you have that movie with this guy who does martial arts?" I looked at her and I'm like, "The martial arts section's over there." And I'm pointing down the aisle where, because it wasn't a huge section, it was pretty
Yeah,
small.
it
But
was a
because,
small store.
yeah, well, it was also a small section for martial arts movies.
Yeah.
But she's like, "No, it's the movie with the guy who he fights an Asian guy at the end of a tournament." I'm like, "Are you talking about Jean Claude Van Damme?" She's like, "Yeah, you know what movie I'm talking about." I'm like, "I know exactly what movie she's talking about," but I'm like, "You've pretty much described all of his movies."
All of his films.
And I'm like, "You're describing the bulk of his movies. I'm gonna need you to be a little more specific." Fights an
See, right off
Asian.
the bat, I know you're talking about Bloodsport.
Yeah, exactly. But she's like, he does the splits and he kicks a guy in the face. It's like fights an Asian guy at the end of a tournament. At that point, it was the quest had already even come out, so it was a rehash.
Yeah.
It's like you did the same thing. So I
Well,
was
that
like,
was like the other day. I had a student walk up to me. He goes to me. He goes, "What's the name of that movie with the guy with the hat who's getting chased by the big ball in the cave?" I go, "You mean Indiana Jones?" He goes, "Yes." I mean, just some
"Oh,
things. I was like, and I'm like, "Where are you going with this?" As soon as he said the guy with the hat getting chased by the ball, not even a boulder. He
yeah."
said the ball, and I'm like, I could school him and tell him the differences, but I'm like Indiana Jones. He goes, "Thank you," and walks away. I was like, "Did that just happen?"
Yeah, this is where what I consider a failure by parents for not properly educating their children on good films.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, I've got some friends that have kids and they are getting their kids into the stuff that they've watched as kids. And, like, these are some of the coolest parents because they're making sure their kids have like that childhood experience very similar. They get to, and they're learning the stuff that you wouldn't really learn when you're watching like these newer movies. The
Right.
older movies, it's like Indiana Jones being chased by a boulder. You, as a kid, you learned what a boulder was.
Right.
Now it's like, are you not paying attention in science class when they're talking to you about the different types of rocks and mountains and boulders? You don't know what a boulder is?
I mean, watching Indiana Jones, I wanted to be an archaeologist.
And that, yeah, it made the study of archaeology seem really cool. And that's another great action movie
Yeah. I know
where,
one of my favorite lines was from The Last Crusade. He's in the classroom telling everybody X never ever marks the spot. They fast forward, they're in Rome, they're looking for the room number 10,
and
and
it,
it's on the ground. He goes, X marks the spot. And we're like, that's awesome. You're just making fun of yourself.
yeah, but it also at the same time, you got to remember, it's the truth. It's like, you hear about something, but things have changed over the years, like,
Yep.
continents have shifted, there's been earthquakes, mudslides, like,
Wildfires.
yeah, they build things on top of like these older spots where there could be something there, but it's just buried deep down. So Indiana Jones really did make everyone want to be an archaeologist, made
Yeah.
it look cool. And
Which,
Harrison Ford was another everyman when it came to like the action movie trope of doesn't have to be the biggest guy in the room. It's just, hey, it's the guy with the swagger, the cool dude.
and the cool thing about Indiana Jones that I think makes him more relatable is in all like the action movies, what don't they show you?
Yeah.
They don't show you what the hero is afraid of. Right in the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, he's in the plane. What's in the plane? Giant snake. And he's
Yeah.
like, I hate snakes. I hate them.
And then
And
and by the
that
time you
makes him more relatable.
and then by the time you got to Last Crusade, they actually show why he's afraid of snakes.
Right.
I mean, the bug scene in Temple of Doom,
I hated that
he
scene.
wasn't afraid of the bugs, but it
Nope.
was like you saw the fear on everyone else.
Yeah. Everybody else was like, "Oh my god, this is disgusting," and he's like, "Just do it."
Yep.
But then you giant fucking snake, and you're like, pass. Sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah, and that was the cool element of it because we were really getting like you saw more complexity to the characters as
Right.
they evolved. I mean, the 90s still kind of carried on the legacy of the action movie of the 80s. It just kind
Right.
of
But
cranked up the explosions and everything.
they cranked up the explosions. It was like having a kid with a new toy. It was like, hey, we can do this with a computer now, and we can blow this up. So let's just do it every other scene, which kind of made it like again, you oversaturated it. You
Yeah.
seen too much of it, kind of got boring. But you went from the big buff guys down to the more everyday looking guy.
Yeah, and
You
I mean,
know?
like when you look at it, it was also more special effects driven
Yes.
because in the 90s, we were getting Jurassic Park where it's like, yeah, the heroes are running, but it's the dinosaurs that you're there for, and those were
Right.
the practical effects mixed with the newer kind of computer generated stuff. So it was an ever evolving thing, but it was like it was really was like the age more of the bigger the explosions the better it got, but that really came into more of effect of the bigger explosions is more the 2000s, the Ridley Scotts that really
Yeah.
crank things up, the Michael
Mm-hmm.
Bays where Michael Bay everything's an explosion. It's like, just because you slammed your hand on the desk doesn't mean the computer explodes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sits
unfortunately,
down in a chair and at your desk, and the car outside explodes. No,
yeah,
Mike, can't do
it,
that.
it's it became too heavy. But in the 90s they kind of were finding that balance.
Right.
And I mean, it became because it was more of a mixed genre. There we didn't have like in the 90s we didn't have the gun ho patriotism for every action movie the way we did in the 80s, but in the 90s, I mean, you were still getting like Stallone kind of action movies, but it changed the tone. Like Demolition Man is a prime example of changing the tone of an action movie. You got the explosions, but now we're going to cryogenically freeze our villain and our hero and
Mm-hmm.
take them out and bring them into a futuristic world so everything's different for them. So it's the fish out of water story with still the action elements.
Right. And you know, sometimes movies like that work. Like another prime example of a great movie that just didn't find its niche, Rapid Fire with Brandon Lee.
Yep.
There you had a good story. A kid, Brandon Lee's character witnesses a murder. They put him in protective custody. He was going to testify against the mob boss. Mob boss hires the cops to go kill him. They frame him for murdering cops, and everything just spirals out of control. Great, great film. Great martial arts scenes. Just kind of got pushed off to the side.
Yeah. And but then he does a movie like The Crow, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately we have the tragedy that happened, but the movie is still outstanding and a wonderful representation of a martial arts action movie that is also part of the comic book boon of comic book movies because
Yeah,
a lot of people didn't realize that The Crow was a comic book at the time.
yeah,
When you think about it as a kid, you may not have known that the Ninja Turtles was a comic book at first, but we knew it as a cartoon and then the live action movie. We didn't we may not have seen it because it was more of an adult comic book when we
yeah.
were
That
growing up.
yeah. I made a mistake of buying my brother when he was little the trade paperback of the Ninja Turtles, not knowing they were all like Raphael cranked up to 10. And I was like, oh shit, what did I just get my 8-year-old brother? And he's flipping, he was like, this is great. I was like, no.
You felt bad, but your brother loved it.
My brother loved it. Don't know what the hell it is now, but I was like, oh shit, what did
Yeah.
I do?
But that's the thing, it's there were things we didn't know back then because we didn't have access to what was based off of something else or not.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't know that the Neverending Story was based off of a book. I found that out when I was old.
Yesterday.
I found that out in my 30s. So it was like, oh shit.
I found that out about 10 seconds ago.
Yeah. And
I
that
just thought it was a film.
yeah, no, it's actually it's based on a book and it's only half of the book. It's
Yeah, it was like another like Lord of the Rings type deal.
no, they kind of changed the story around, but then they kind of took the second part of the book and made the second never-ending story, but there were still changes and things that it's not the same movie as the book, but the book is way more intense.
I bet.
No, the Atreyu's horse actually talks, so it really puts a little more gravity into, you see the memes of like, oh, the things that killed your childhood, and you're seeing like Atreyu trying to pull
The horse
Artax
out of the.
Artax through the swamp of sorrows, and the horse just keeps sinking. It's like in the book, the horse is talking to him, telling him to let him go, and it's like, oh my god, that really like
Yeah.
it yanks on the emotional strings like so much more than you ever think. So now, but going into the 90s, like looking at the stuff there, it was like it was a slow progression, but the 90s were a weird time for movies. Sci-fi
Yeah.
movies weren't really a thing, but action movies were still kind of going strong, but they weren't as popular, but it was more direct to video releases, it seemed like back then.
Yeah. It was a lot of like sci-fi. Some of them, yeah, yeah, they just hit at the right time, like the Blade Runners, the Star Wars, the Star Treks. They just kind of hit at the right time, and they weren't too heavy on the special effects because, let's face it, in the early '90s, again, we didn't really have all the effects that we have now.
Yeah, most of our
Uh,
action movies then were they weren't sci-fi based, they were comic book based.
yeah, and even the few that were sci-fi based, like it wasn't anything like, they if they wanted to create, you know, a burned out city from an apocalypse, they built the sets out in the desert.
Yeah.
You know,
And then it wasn't until like the late 90s when the Matrix hit. And the
yeah,
Matrix hit at the right turning point really.
right,
Cuz
because everybody kind of got tired of all like the big buff guys shooting everything up.
oh, it wasn't even that. It was the special effects that were going into it where it mixed like the martial arts, the sci-fi elements to it, along with the new special effects of like bullet time with the wire
Hmm.
work and stuff. That was like that point where it really was like the turning point going into the new millennia.
Yeah, because everybody was like, "Holy shit, what is this?" And
Yeah.
then they did the whole thing where it came out in '99, right?
Yep.
What were we all thinking about in '99? Oh
Yep.
shit, Y2K.
Yeah. So
Everything's gonna shut down, and here's a perfect time. Let's release a movie about machines who take over.
and I mean that would work now kind of today with the rise of like the AI and the chat GPTs and stuff where
Yeah,
people's concerns are starting because this is going to like and it's one of the reasons why we support the writers and I mean the directors guild got kind of like a tentative agreement so but the actors guild finally just got permission to be able to strike so we'll see how that all plays out but the writers are fighting because part of it is that they want fair compensation but the other part
which they
really is
should get.
they shouldn't have to deal with having to work on AI generated stuff.
Right. See, an AI generated movie, I think, is going to be boring because you don't have the writers putting in the time to just think about the lines.
Well, it's not even
You
that.
know?
It's you figure there's a complexity when it comes to storytelling and like AI will never be able to tell jokes because
Right.
its jokes are going to be corny dad jokes. It's not going to
Right.
be something because how when you look at it like a stand-up comic and I was listening to the Christopher Titus podcast and he brought it up and he's right. It's when you look at it on like from what he said on his show where comedy is like taking something logical and then kind of turning it on its head and making it illogical.
Yeah.
And AI is not doing that. AI is only going to go logic based. It's not going to be able to, but there's a lot of concerns about what's going on. I mean, it affects artists for graphic art and stuff. It's affecting editors. There's a lot of different things that are going on that it's throwing everything into kind of an upheaval.
Human, they should never. I mean, some things AI fine, entertainment, definitely military. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Those are things that should always be human driven.
Yeah. And
You know.
yeah, the technology is getting better and better, especially when it comes to the special effects. I mean, if you can have AI that'll help generate better effects, great. But that should only be a supplemental tool, not
Right.
the main tool. And like going into the 2000s with like the action movies, they really they started to find their niche, like where it was a new type of action movie. But action movies started to kind of fall out of fashion, but we started seeing like we got stuff like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. We
Mm-hmm.
were seeing like stuff from more exposure from like Asian elements of their cinema. Asian cinema really has like great roots, and it's like we saw more of it. I mean, in the 90s we were getting like the Jackie Chan Rumble in the Bronx and stuff like that, but in the 2000s we were really starting to see like the influence that it had on American directors as well.
Yep.
But we were also still getting like big explosions, bigger explosions, better. It go boom, it's great. But
Mm-hmm.
fantasy started to really start taking a hold, which is where we got like Lord of the Rings, where we got the action sequences in there where it was more sword and sorcery. I mean, even if you look at the first Dungeons and Dragons movie, it was an action movie. It wasn't a
Yeah.
great movie. I mean, you can tell it seemed like a lot of people took that movie for the paycheck.
Oh, without a doubt.
But I mean, like Thora Birch was great in it. She didn't have much to do. She wasn't doing the action stuff. But Jeremy Irons hamming it up on there made it
Yeah.
fun. So it was something still to watch. I mean, the sword fighting wasn't like the same level of Conan,
No.
but it was still like something. But then
I
action seemed to be like late 90s, early 2000s seemed to have more of a feel on television than it did on in the movies.
yeah, you could say that. I
Because I
mean,
mean,
because you had the Hercules and Xena.
well, that was yeah, started in the 90s, moved into the 2000s, but also in around that same time we had a Beastmaster TV series, we had a
Mm-hmm.
Conan TV series.
We did.
Yeah, there was a Conan series. It wasn't with Schwarzenegger, it was another guy, but
Obviously,
it didn't last very long, but I mean, like there was more TV driven stuff. I mean, there was a Crow, Stairway to Heaven,
I
same
remember that.
character, and that was Mark Dacascos,
Yep.
which was a great series. It was very interesting, expanded on the mythology behind it. It it was worth it. But I mean, let's face it, all the action stuff we were getting like in the 90s, even continuing into the 2000s, really was TV based because a lot of it was, I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. 90s gave us Power Rangers, and that kind of continued on throughout and is still continuing because it's still going on to this day. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the 30th anniversary Once a Ranger that was on Once and Always on Netflix goes to show that there's still a want and a need for stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you have a show with such a strong fan base, even though it went through so many different
Changes,
changes,
the
just different
series was
versions. The series pretty much
every
stayed the same at heart
it
with
yeah,
different teams.
different teams, different styles, because it was like, oh, one was taking on machines, one was magic based, one was more technology based, one was about cars, another's about
Right.
dinosaurs, some are ninjas. It meets a different like fantasy but also action based need.
It all fits in the same niche.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, like, but as we went into the 2000s, it changed up a little bit, but it it's only like now more current day where we can kind of like narrow it down to stuff where the genre's kind of gone to either Creed or Michael Bay,
Yeah.
where it's like it's either going to be like hard hitting driven stuff or where it's like you can see the actors like really taking the beating, or it's going to be, hey, here's a bunch of CGI, and we're going to be blowing up motorcycles and helicopters, and we're going to have like giant robots blowing up. I mean,
Hmm.
it'd be cool to see another GI Joe movie. It's just, can we not have it where it's like Michael Bay? Because I have to say, the Snake Eyes movie was actually really good.
See, I wasn't. I didn't see it.
Well, you missed out. It's something I recommend because it was more like very like pulled down, not as much as like like the first or the second GI Joe movie where it's like, oh, here's The Rock playing Roadblock.
I
Channing Tatum.
actually
Channing
liked.
Tatum as Duke.
I didn't mind Channing Tatum as Duke. I actually liked the second GI Joe a little bit better than the first one, only because, like, the second one, even though it was ridiculous, had a little bit more, had one toe in reality,
See,
where you didn't have all like just bringing out.
see,
Excuse me.
I kind of liked the first one more because it had a little more like heart and comedy. I mean, I think Wayans like gave it like that little more like where kids could still watch it, and
Oh, without a
it
doubt.
kept more of the tone of the original like cartoon series.
Yeah, but just like some of the things, like when the car, like the doors opened up, and you see all the missiles coming out, and you're
Hmm.
like, but where is that sitting in reality? Nobody will be able to sit in the back seat.
Yeah. Well, I
You
mean,
know?
let's face it. For like 10 years or more, we've been running on Fast and Furious, and I've got to say, because I have to address the news, I don't know if you heard that not only is The Rock coming back, but do you know how they got him to come back?
I knew The Rock was coming back. I heard that. I heard that story.
But did you hear how they got him to come back?
I heard. Remind me because I heard it and I forgot. But I.
So The Rock is coming back in as Hobbs, but he's getting a separate movie.
Yeah, I knew
So
that.
it's not going to be Hobbs and Shaw. This is a Hobbs movie. This
Hobbs and Shaw was hysterical. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you know what? There's something about him with Jason Statham that really puts it over the top. But he's
Mm-hmm.
getting his own movie. They gave it a cliffhanger. So it's like, we know Fast 10 is going to be part of a multi-part, but
Yeah, because they don't want it to end. So let's make
yeah,
the one movie that's supposed to wrap everything up into three.
yeah, but we're giving The Rock a movie. That's how we got him to come back. I guess the DC stuff, like trying to hold them hostage, wasn't working with Black Adam. And I hate to say it. I mean, The Rock's made some great movies.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed like these Jumanji sequels and stuff, but it'll never compete with the original. But to me, this like, I'm sorry, I got to sit there and laugh. It's like you needed your own movie because you didn't realize how shitty of a movie it was for Black Adam. Black Adam's character didn't really talk much. I know there's a history there, but if you're not a comic book fan, you're not going to know the history. And it's not even like you let Shazam cross over because they are part of the same universe, the same mythology. And it's like, we
Hell,
didn't get that.
even at the end of the first Shazam, when they're all sitting in like the Mystic Cave or whatever, you had the sixth seat, and like, who's that for? And it goes, well, whoever it's for, we'll welcome him, and it's for Black Adam.
Yep.
But I mean, this is where I'm sorry, as an actor, you have to realize I'm part of a team. As a director, as a producer, you have to say, hey, guess what? I'm hired to make a good film. I'm hired to tell a good story. To tell a good story, I need this here.
Yeah.
You as the actor are part of a puzzle. I need this puzzle piece here to make my picture good.
Yep.
Deflate the fucking ego, shut the fuck up. You're getting paid a ridiculous amount of money to play make believe and dress up. Shut the fuck up and do what you're told. Which
Yeah.
is true, they are.
Oh,
Make believe
absolutely.
and dress up. That's what they're playing.
Yeah. The problem just tended to be that we're sitting there and we're kind of like, oh, what are we getting? We ain't getting shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, but we're getting another movie with The Rock, which will be great to see a Hobbs movie. It's not. It doesn't seem like it's gonna have Shaw, but you know what? I will watch
You
almost
never know.
any movie with Jason Statham anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, Statham has like the great action sense, the timing for like his delivery of dialogue is like very funny when it. I don't even think it's intentional sometimes,
No, it's not.
and that's the thing. It's like he's a badass, you know.
I mean, and if you want to watch like early good Jason Statham movies, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah.
Watch Snatch.
Yep.
Okay, the when they promoted that film, it was like Benicio del Toro, Brad Pitt. Benicio del Toro was in it for maybe about 15 minutes.
Okay, but you can't. You also can't forget the one with Jet Li.
The one with Jet Li. That's another great one. I
Yeah,
am Unico. I am nobody's bitch.
Jason Statham every time the portal opens. 30 seconds.
It, it's just, I
And then
mean,
you can't forget the Crank movies.
I try to.
Oh come on, those are so much fun.
Yeah, but I mean, he's banging one girl just to keep his heart pumped, and he's out while he's running away from people shooting him. He's banging his girl. I'm like, what the hell you doing, bro?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but if
and then
people
he
need,
goes off and he makes the Megs.
okay, I'm sorry, but I gotta say this. It's like right now, people need to see my face, the look of shock of you like bashing the Crank movies. Oh
I'm
my,
not. I'm not bashing them.
you're shitting on the movies.
I'm not shitting on them. Maybe I'm poofing on them. I'm not shitting on them.
No, those movies are absolutely great. Like seriously, it's like they're over the top. They're meant to be like so crazy. I absolutely love them. They are great. And then you got the great John DeLance like just popping up in there.
Yeah.
It's like you've got Q from Star Trek The Next Generation, like just as like the reporter, like all the crazy shit that goes on, seeing him like hooking himself up to a car battery to jumpstart his heart to get the adrenaline going.
And then he goes off and he makes the Meg and the Meg 2, the Trench.
Oh, I'm sorry, but now on our next episode, you've got to see we've got to actually watch the trailer.
I watched the
No,
trailer.
no, Crackoon.
Oh, God. Is that real?
Yes, it looks real. I've seen the trailer. Crackoon. You like we have to watch this and actually like do a reaction video to this cuz I was watching like somebody's reaction to it and it's like, "Oh my god." And for you, someone who always says, "How do these movies keep getting made?" It's like you
Yes.
still can't understand it, but yet it's getting made. So, you know, these are things we have to go and we got to look like I think we need to look at some of these trailers and like kind of do a reaction, but we need to be in the same room to do
Okay.
this.
We
So,
could do that.
yeah. Like we got to find some of these like trailers for movies that it's like you can't believe this shit got made.
They're making a fucking cocaine shark.
Yeah, the second Cocaine Bear got said to the theaters, the Sci-Fi Channel already had Cocaine Shark in the works.
They're really making a second cocaine bear?
No, no, just like I don't know if they're doing a second one,
Oh.
but once the first one went to the theaters, Cocaine Shark was already set up on the Sci-Fi Channel. So,
Cocaine Bear 2 out of rehab. Jonesing for a fix.
yeah, considering the fact that the real story was drug guys tossed like they ditched the cocaine and the bear ate it and died.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all the real story was. Now it's just like,
he overdosed.
yeah,
Now he's like, he's going nuts. He needs another fix.
yeah, it's like the bear and its cubs need the cocaine.
You see the husband bear pimping out his wife to get a fix.
Oh,
Selling the cubs to Burlington.
oh yeah, you know it's a shame that I think what was that Ray Liotta's last movie.
Yeah.
But you did get Ray Liotta fighting with the bear over the bag of cocaine.
Did you?
Yes.
Yes. And that is that he goes out on a high note.
Yeah.
I said it before. If you did not have a scene where you have Ray Liotta fighting the bear for the cocaine, it would be a failed film. Now that you have it in there, fucking awesome.
You need to watch it because you'll get a kick
really
out.
don't.
Yes,
really
you
don't.
do. No,
No, I really don't.
you do. You do.
No, I don't.
No, because here's the thing: you write your scripts, right?
I do.
And you keep wondering how come these movies get made but not yours. maybe you should take a look at these lower budget movies and see what they're doing, because clearly they're doing something right.
I probably know people. I don't know anybody.
Well, there's that too, but at the same time, it's like they're still writing a script that it's like you if you use theirs as a template, you could see what's getting made, and there's a chance. Because I gotta say, I watched the movie that I'm like, it was so bad that it turned around to me, because I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible.
Hey! Comic Book Jones was not that bad.
I enjoyed Comic Book Jones, the movie.
So did I.
Actually,
So did I
was
too.
it was a fun shoot.
It was a fun
We
shoot.
really should have been shooting it when the store was closed, but
Hey, one of the things was to shoot there. He let me shoot. He let me shoot there for nothing, so
Yeah.
I couldn't exactly.
yeah. Now,
Yeah.
I will say that if anyone does want to see what we're talking about for Comic Book Jones the movie, it's on the Blue Dragoon 13 YouTube page. You can check that out. Feel free to watch it and let us know. Like, it's a shame that the store is no longer around anymore,
Yeah.
but it really was a fun movie to watch. So it's one of those things where we made it and Mike wrote it. I was behind the camera. I was editing it. You know, Mike had me worried because I almost had to be in it, and that actress was
Drunk.
inebriated, and I'll just say inebriated, and I'm glad because she kept punching her yeah,
Co actor.
the co-actor in the scene. So her
He
scene
left.
started up.
No joke. That dude left with like black and blues all over his arm.
Yeah, and I would have probably only been able to take one, and you would have already been seeing the bruises in the next scene. So yeah, so it was definitely a blast, and I try to keep that as a promotional thing in the credits for, well, in our in the description links on the YouTube. Every episode for the show, it seems to be there.
Okay.
I refuse to let that one die.
No, and as well, you shouldn't.
Yeah. So anybody can check that out on the Blue Dragoon 13 YouTube page. You know, I think we've talked enough about like these action movies and stuff. I will say that it's like you can tell we're getting to the point where action movies are pretty much just being remade. I mean, when we went from Red Dawn to a new version of Red Dawn, where it went from communist Russia invading the US to, what was it, North Korea for this new one?
Well, you have to understand with something like that. It's like, okay, when the original Red Dawn came out, who was the threat? Russia.
Yep.
Now who's the threat? North Korea.
Russia.
So,
They're
but more
still a
North
threat.
Korea. Right, but it's more of North Korea with that little fucking Kim Jong Un on the. I'm gonna blow everybody up.
Kim Jong
But,
Un passed away. Now it's Kim Jong Il.
whatever.
Or which one reverse? I don't know.
Yeah.
Although I will
But-
say, my brother and I, Jay, Jay picked up the game Homefront, and I think it was on the PlayStation 3, and it was like set in that kind of like Red Dawn kind of world, and they had in there where it was like Kim Jong Un died and left his son Kim Jong Un in charge, and he started unifying North and South Korea, like, and they were taking over the globe, becoming a global superpower, and that was just a prediction in a video game, and then it ended up being something that actually happened.
Yeah.
He dies and leaves it to his son. So, yeah, sometimes things actually have a almost prophetic way of happening, kind of like The Simpsons.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap things up. You still have your production to do.
Yeah. This is the last weekend of the Divine Sister. It's
Promoting
Friday.
this now isn't going to work too well because
Yeah, I know.
the show's going to come out on Sunday, so
Sunday.
we're recording.
Yeah.
on
So
a
this
Thursday.
is the last. This is the last weekend of it, but you will be able to see me promote the new Evolution Wrestling. If you want to come out to the show, let me pull that up real quick. Here it is. Best of the Best, New Evolution Wrestling. I will be making my debut as the general manager. Best of the Best will be at the RPD Court Time Sports Complex, 201 Westfield Avenue, West Rochelle Park, New Jersey. Bell time is at 6:30. Tickets are $25. General admission. If you want the first row, it's $30. Come on down. It's going to be a stacked card. The wrestlers are top notch. Come see them now before they become famous, so you can say I knew this person when.
And not only that, but just as a extra little side note, you'll get to see Mike in person. You know, maybe you can get his autograph. Tell him how
Maybe.
much you hate him.
Yeah, tell them how much you want to see the Magnum stash.
Yeah, exactly. You know, show him that you're signed up on the Instagram page or the Facebook group for Dragoon's Lair podcast so that this way we can get him to get that Magnum stash. Make
I
sure you
will do it.
we need you guys
I'll
to
grow it.
we need you to follow the page, like us, subscribe, like do all the things because we want him to get that Magnum stash. Doug and I are really pushing for that Magnum stash.
Hey, if what did we say? If we hit 50
50, you
followers,
said 50.
if we hit 50 followers, I will do my best to grow the stash.
Yep, there we go. And that's gonna be one of those things that it's like never seen you with full facial hair. So I mean, like, we gotta see this. This is like Doug and I are really pushing for it, not
Well,
just
it
a
was like
scruff. Like we want.
it was reverse day last week because I hung out with Doug,
Yeah,
and I had the full scruffy beard going, and he was clean shaven.
yeah.
Only thing on that motherfucker's face was his eyebrows. The only hair he had was his eyebrows. I know.
So
Even Maggie was like, "The fuck is wrong with you?"
yeah. So want to hit the socials, Mike?
Okay, you can follow the Blue Dragoon.
Thank you for promoting me. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Calm down, Dragon. All right, you want to follow the podcast? You can hit us up on Instagram at the Dragoon's Lair Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at the Dragoon's Lair Podcast. I am also on Facebook. Find me, Michael Schiavo, or you can find my film company, Hamster Pellet Productions, on Instagram and on the Facebook.
And you can find Blue Dragoon 13, that would be me, on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. And on Twitch, you can find the link for the Discord page so you can be part of the community there. You know, make sure you follow us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, on YouTube. You know, we love hearing from you guys. Make sure you email us. I haven't done this quite a bit in this episode, so I'm going to make sure I really do this one hardcore right now. Email us at dragoonslairpodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word. Dragoon is spelled with 2 O's. That's dragoonslairpodcast@gmail.com. For all of your comments, concerns, send it to us at dragoonslairpodcast@gmail.com, and we will answer your emails on the air. And I'm pretty sure that if you go to our Spotify page on Spotify, I believe there's a way to leave audio messages. So
Yes.
if you'd like to do that, please leave us an audio message and we will make sure that we respond to each and every one of you. Let us know what you think. We have polls and questions up on the Spotify page. So I think the voting is still going on for if Mike is a real boy or not. But we have other ones up there as well. So we put one up for every episode. So make sure you check that out and vote. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And if you did see Danielle's show, leave us a comment. Make sure you say something to her on Des Maravets on Instagram. Trust me, it was a good show, and I think anybody who saw it should definitely leave some good comments there. And with that being said, I am Daniel the Dragon, the Blue Dragoon himself, and this has been
Me, Mike Schiavo, King Hamster Pellet.
And we just want to say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Now get out.
Later, peoples.
Bye.